Semdol kake mofaseda.
Welcome to Talking in Stations, a podcast about EVE Online, recorded live on Twitch Saturdays, 1500 Universal Time. I am your host, Matterall, from Destructive Influence in Northern Coalition. I'm also from Imperium News. So today we're going to cover the monthly economic report and some of the consequences that have come out of that, or apparent consequences, but it looks like CCP, the company that makes EVE, is developing some nerfs for some very critical areas, and that's what we'll get into today. And we have great guests, Aerith.
Hello.
With us today is also Noisy Gamer.
Hello, everyone.
And we have Carneros.
Good morning.
And Seamus from EVE University.
Good morning, New Eden.
All right. Well, a lot has happened in the last 2 weeks. I mean, it's been some heavy news cycles, and you can tell by looking at INN, it's just covered with story after story after story of things that are going on. But really, it's kind of hitting a crescendo right here before the summer break, because if I'm not mistaken, summer's about to start everywhere. And so EVE typically kind of slows down. So this might be a lot of activity before people go on vacations and stuff like that. So one of the things that came out that people were eagerly awaiting was the monthly economic report. And I want to point out that a few episodes ago, when we had Aerith on, we talked about that in depth. And so you can listen to that one if you need to have some more background. But I would like to start at the very beginning with the MER, as they call it. And Aerith, if you could tell us what it is and why it's so meaningful.
So the MER is a CCP-generated economic report that breaks down production, trade, import, export, mining, ratting. It essentially tells you by region how EVE is doing economically, and more importantly, it gives you strategic and very sensitive intelligence, if you read it right, on what groups are doing, where supers are at, routes of trade to interdict, and that kind of thing. So it seems to be the primary mechanism by which CCP has been balancing for the last 6 months or so, which is ironic because it's been wrong and just hilariously wrong until the last couple of months.
Does you think that they look at stats beyond the MER, or do you think this is really transparent to the same stuff that they're looking at?
I think there's probably some stats that they look that are more in depth than the MER. I think we make suggestions in the CSM chat, and I'm sure they have their own internal suggestions. But the MER is definitely the thing that's driving the overall narrative, I believe, especially disparity between Delve and the rest of Null. You see these snarky kind of under-the-breath comments from CCP when they do their posts, when they do their live things, that goons are too good. And I've made suggestions in the CSM chat that, hey, why don't you tell me what is the level of success that is not too far? Maybe we should regulate behavior, since you seem to be nerfing EVE because of goons over and over again. To the point where even Fozzie in his post says on the anomaly nerf, well, this is only going to affect a few top-end systems. It's well, maybe if you look at it a very certain way, that you're only targeting goons. But the problem is it's actually going to affect anyone who mines a Colossus a day at all. So it's a very short-sighted first-order effect type reasoning on the devs' part.
Well, we'll get into the nerfs in just a minute, because they did put out a lot of stuff that's going to happen over the next month and a half. But do you actually feel like a lot of the stuff is directed at your alliance?
Oh, yeah. There's no question of that. Now, I do believe that CCP has a genuine concern that is faucets too high, that mining is out of whack. But we are definitely the drivers, I think, of those statistics. By any measure, goons are exploiting that mechanic harder than anyone. So I do think that some of the new changes they've introduced were targeted directly at goons. Others, I don't believe that. Like the Supercat fighter thing. I don't think that's necessarily directed entirely at goons, but we're probably the largest abusers of them.
All right, so let's look at that MER report that came out. What did it basically say this month?
Goons are better than everyone again.
someone else here can. All right. Well, go ahead.
Well, okay. I'm not okay. So part of me is that I don't usually look at the legitimate in-game economy. I'm more into the black market. But one of the things that struck me is in decline, that they were like number 2 in ratting at like 4.5 trillion on a per capita basis, you know, or on the average account basis. Are they actually out ratting Goon Swarm in Delve?
I guess if you try to do some sort of weird metric where you're trying to divide characters by systems or characters by region, you could probably make that argument. But the problem is, I think that we're spread over a couple regions. People often forget Fake Quarius or Fake Delve, whichever one you want to call it. But it's kind of a weird, different way to look at it. I would say that there are regions in EVE that probably do higher per capita ratting than Goons because a large amount of our economy is mining, as you can see in the report. So we're fairly balanced, where if you look at the report in a way that if you do total economic output, it's not really even a comparison.
Yeah. Well, what's interesting here, just a little backstory for people who are catching up, is that this report has been coming out every month, and it showed the dramatic increase in income generation in the area where the Imperium is, and that it would be in the Delve area. And that has happened for at least 2 months now. And I'm sure that data is catching up to what was already happening, because people were talking about the, how much activity was going on down there for mining and income generation. Well, last month, it looked like it was, a spike. And then this month it's even higher. And so I think CCP basically said a few weeks ago, or maybe more than that, that they were going to do something to curb the income generation, and they have nerfed pretty aggressively the Rorqual and the drones that actually do the mining for the Rorqual. And in addition to that, they said that they were going to nerf the fighters that actually do a lot of the NPC killing, which generates bounties, which is money for the carriers. And so both these things have really looks like they've been put in place, or at least the explanation was to lower the amount of income that's being generated. But the part, especially about the carrier, is that it influences PvP, and people are up in arms about that. Whether that's real or not is kind of what people are debating. Is that a fair assessment?
Yeah, I think that's a fair assessment. CCP is definitely not waiting to see the impact of point changes or PvE only changes. They're kind of taking this broad brush, and they're, quite frankly, they're knee jerking right now. They, I think, are panicked by what they're seeing, that the measures they've taken up to this point aren't working, and it's getting worse. And I think they're seeing that the disparity of economic output gap only get wider, to where you see one region just running away with it. But overall, I think some of these changes are responding to Delve. And again, some of these changes are responding to the total IST being generated, the total mining being generated. So I think there's 2 sets of things they're attacking, which is why we've seen 6, 7, 8 different changes slammed in the last 30 days, or coming in.
Do you also think that maybe they misjudged the popularity of the free-to-play aspect? Usually, it's it's okay to have a rising amount of currency in your system if you also have a lot of more players coming in. But if they're not getting as many players coming in, then all of a sudden that could lead to inflation sometime down the road.
I don't know if they've misjudged. I don't necessarily get that sense from them. I do think they're probably somewhat disappointed, like that the alphas aren't stickier. And I do think we are probably seeing some of the effects of people that have traditionally been omegas falling to alpha now. So they haven't given us stats, and I couldn't talk about them if they had in a while. But my sense is, based on what we're seeing in our own membership, that the omegas aren't really growing right now. And with some of the changes they've done coming up, it's probably not likely to. And we're not likely to get any good news since they're going to be gone for 2 to 3 months. So this is very poor timing on CCP's part to cram this many negative player impacting things in and be like, okay, peace out, fuck y'all, we're going on vacation.
Yeah, it seems like it's coming right before they're taking breaks, and maybe the idea is to nerf the heck out of it since there's so much money in the system now anyway. They can come back and start to loosen things up later, although that's not what happened with Phoebe, so with the jump drive changes. So who knows if that's... What is it? Their style is to nerf aggressively and then slowly let up on it?
No, they went. I mean, they were very frank with us when they were showing us the new Rorquals, and because we gave this feedback, we told them this was going to happen, that Rorquals were massively overpowered. they acknowledged that. They said they were okay with that, that they would rather introduce them being overpowered and then nerf them down. I think the problem became, one, they didn't react fast enough, and two, I think they didn't react fast enough because the MER was bullshit. It was wrong. And until players were pointing out that it's wrong, here's all the ways it is wrong, and then they fixed it, they've only recently, in the last 2 months, had good data. Maybe 3 because they released it to players after. So they've only had a short period of time with which to judge the full impact of this, and it's only been getting worse. Like if you look at all the slopes, we run away with it more, but overall, null in comparison to HiSec is running away with it. So don't just think of it as goons versus the rest of null. Think of it as null versus HiSec ratios and the mechanics they would like to keep in place between how healthy HiSec is versus nullsec and that sort of thing. I think they think the balance is tipped too far to nullsec.
Right, because this nullsec generates amazing amounts of wealth if that money, and this is very interesting, were to make it into the markets in HiSec, it would really devalue the efforts of HiSec workers. So if somebody was mining in HiSec, their winnings or whatever they mined wouldn't be worth as much because there's so much coming from outside in outlaw space. But that's not what's happening with you guys because you're not really exporting your minerals, it looks like. In fact, you're importing minerals.
Yeah, we pretty much export no minerals. We generally, like for a while, I was having to manipulate Gita and Mexilon just to keep Dell stocked. Like I was popping mechs to like 100 ISK a unit or 90 plus ISK a unit just because I would move into Gita and I wasn't trying to necessarily manipulate and pop it. I would be like, I need this much, fuck it, we might as well manipulate it, right? Get a few billion units off of mechs. That has a huge impact on Gita. That was just to keep the Delve Supercat machine running because we had a Mexilon bottleneck. Now, with the changes that CCP's done already and the changes they're doing now, Mexilon won't really be the bottleneck anymore. It'll actually probably be Trit, or it actually already is Trit. So it'll make it even worse. So yeah, our minerals don't really leave Delve. They go right into supers. They go right into other production.
So while they're worried about income generation, the inflation actually, the prices haven't really gone up that I've noticed in HiSec, unless I haven't noticed. But so the inflation isn't actually happening, but the income generation is happening.
Yeah, I think they're probably seeing what's going to happen long term, right? So when you start seeing a disparity of income, like this is the income equality kind of argument that happens in real life. When you start seeing that run away, as a game developer, you innately have this feeling that you need to address that, right? That they've had this balance throughout EVE's history of HiSec and nullsec and lowsec and how they all interact and rough economic output. But CCP they haven't really come to terms with the new nullsec. Like to make nullsec vibrant, which I would argue nullsec is more vibrant now than it ever has been. Let's leave the war part out of it for a moment. Just economic, PvE, quality of life, people living in null. I think it's better than it ever has been right now. But that is a large change from what has traditionally occurred in EVE. And I think they're uncomfortable with that.
Yeah. Well, it also isn't, I mean, it does point to a lot of success in Delve, but there's also other places where there's huge amounts of, what do you call it, care bear activity, or they call it bearing, I guess. People making money off the territory that they've conquered.
Yeah, I mean, there kind of is, but there's only probably 4 or 5 regions in EVE that have what I would consider a large, healthy output of economic activity. The rest of null is pretty much barren and fallow, and you can see those numbers directly from the economic report. It's very obvious, and they are predominantly the regions that are set up well for FuzzySoft, and that is no shock to anyone really.
Oh, well, that's interesting.
So when you say regions that are set up well for FuzzySoft, considering all the complaints that we've heard over the last months and years about FuzzySoft, what is considered a region well set up for FuzzySoft?
So you're going to want, I've spoken about this on previous talking stages, but I'll highlight it again for those viewers. It's about 20 different variables. I'll just talk about the top 4 or 5, right? You want a capital that is centrally located that has capital and supercap coverage for all your major economic areas. So if you look at Delve and we're in 1DQ, 1DQ has an umbrella coverage of all of the western side of Delve, which is all our best constellations, and it also has fake Delve, which is Quirius, and it can also project power to the eastern parts of Delve where there's some pockets of activity. Impasse is very much set up the same way. You want good bridge coverage. You want to be able to have a capital that has bridge coverage within one gate to basically all your major economic pockets. You want decent logistics. Like, you don't want to be 3, 4, 5 mids deep into null. You just get fucked. Your economic activity will be starved off. Those are the kind of scenarios that you want to plan for. So there's only a few regions, like Declan's one, Delve and Impasse. But Cobalt Edge is never going to be some economic powerhouse just based on where it's living. Like, they're so deep that they have to rely on wormholes, which means you're screwed, right? So there's only a few regions in Eve that can really be this model. And until that changes, I don't think you're going to see much of a change on that.
Yeah, that's interesting. And I guess I missed it. I was probably sleeping during that time on the last Talking in Stations, but it is interesting to know that the Fozisov, one of the chief complaints when it was being developed was that nullsec isn't worth it. And he kept saying it was. And so I guess he's been proven, he's been vindicated at least on that.
Well, it's both. It's 90, well, maybe not, like 75% of nullsec is not worth it. But there are small point sources that are.
Well, isn't that kind of a strategy to make people fight over certain territories? Like, because one of the complaints is, like, if everybody has good space, then nobody's going to fight over stuff. But you're saying there are peaks and valleys in the topography of nullsec income generation potential.
There absolutely is. Like, this is the way it was back in the Bob era, which is why Delve was always considered the #1 region, because it had so many advantages that nowhere else had. So Delve was the top of the mountain. You wanted to take Delve. That is somewhat true again. Delve is a great region. Declan's a great region. Impasse is a great region. There's certain regions that are really far and away better than their sister regions. And they are also, the size of the region matters now. You need to have a region that is very attuned to the size of who's holding it. So I'll keep picking on Impasse CO2 because it was a great choice by them, by the way. They are probably a little small for Impasse, but if they grow a little bit, they'll be a good 5K solid alliance is Impasse, right? And at Goons, we couldn't be anywhere. Like, Declan wouldn't even really hold us anymore. We basically can only be in Delve. Maybe 1 or 2 of the eastern drone regions, maybe if it's set up right. But other than that, we have very few places that could actually hold us. So you have to tune where you live to what you're capable of doing now.
Yeah, and go ahead.
Yeah, as to, like, being set up with the right size to your region, it looked like Providence was doing fairly better than I would have expected in the MER. Is that some of those same conditions there also, even though they don't have really good TrueSec?
Sort of. So they have the advantage that they can run large reaction farms. They can do easy production and importation empire. So they have advantages that are better than almost anyone because of their multiple high-sec entrances. So yes, they have advantages that are somewhat unique to Providence that mostly offset their disadvantages of TrueSec. So they should be an economic powerhouse. Unfortunately, they're just going to get dogpiled in a few months. So yeah.
And that's because they have a bunch of stations. Is that what you're referring to?
Yeah, pretty much all of Null's been kind of talking that, everyone wants to dogpile probably and loot them and then unanchor all the new stations and just take them back and sell them or anchor them in their own space. So it's unfortunate, but it's foreseen. Wow.
So Pravi's going to change dramatically after that date, when that day comes. And what we're referring to is, does somebody else want to explain it? Seamus or Carneros, either of you guys? I can explain.
I'm a little unclear on what we're talking about now.
Yeah, I'll do it. So CCP is changing outposts. So as part of the removal of player-made outposts and conquerables, they are going to convert them into special citadels that you can. They come with special rigs. They have better bonuses, and so you can unanchor them, and you'll lose some of the bonuses, but they'll still be better than a comparable Fortizar, for example. So think of a Fortizar that's better than a Fortizar, but not as good as a keep. Faction Fortizars, basically. And you'll be able to unanchor those, sell them on G to market, anchor them in your own space, leave them where they are, whatever. But Pravi's got so many stations they've dropped, sort of like Declan, that everyone wants to just go there and loot them. Like, maybe we would pick a constellation and we'd take them all in this, and maybe PL wants this constellation. So everyone just can go in there and loot them dry and then run back to their space.
Yeah, and so and this may happen in other areas too, but Providence has a concentration of stations because almost every system in that region has a station that players have put up over the years. So it's going to be interesting, maybe happy, maybe sad, that the landscape of that place is going to change because a lot of those stations will be gone.
And to be clear, fair, we haven't decided if we were going to participate yet. We kind of like Providence, but it is kind of a loot pinata, so I don't know.
Well, you may go there to just be the spoiler, right? Like go there and defend Providence.
I think we would definitely enjoy third partying there, but if there's a gentleman's agreement where everyone carves off a constellation, then you can't really do that. But we'll have to see how it shakes out. There was just some initial discussions, but everyone's in wait and see mode right now because you want to see what the stats are going to be, what the date's going to be, and then because you don't need to go there months before that, you just need to go there maybe 30 days out.
Right, that's what I was saying. All these movements are too early. Like they were talking about the anime war being a precursor to the station's, money grab, and I was like, that's a lot. That's really early. I don't think people have to position themselves so far in advance.
No, if the patch is December, we wouldn't go down there probably till like November.
Yeah, but right now, probably diplomacy is probably starting off to figure out how that place is going to be carved up, if it's going to be carved up.
Yeah, some initial discussion, but I think it's still too early. I think you wouldn't see like everyone picking their loot for a couple months out.
Right. All right. Well, one of the byproducts of having so much money being generated is where does it all go if it doesn't go back into the markets in the game? And it's been suggested by CCP Quant that is kind of the environment that RMT starts to become more prevalent, and that is real money transactions or trading, real money trading or whatever. And what that means is players basically selling off in-game ISK or assets. Noisy, is that oh, go ahead.
No, go ahead, Noisy.
Yeah, that's basically it. One of CCP's longstanding strategies to combat RMT is to try to make it so that the RMTers don't make as much money, that they can't sell as much, that people won't want to buy from RMT because RMT is if you go to a black market site, their ISK is defective. If you buy ISK from them, it could blow up your account. You could lose 7 days of training because CCP will come and take it away from you. So the RMTers have to have a big enough cushion between the rate that you could buy it in JITA versus what they're selling in order to attract people to take that risk. When you get this much excess ISK in the system, that means that people can sell it for less because they're generating more. So they make up in volume what they don't make up in price. And that's what Quant was referring to in his Reddit post. And,
all right.
And I should add, just from what I've seen, I would, just based on the price in JITA, I would expect the price on the black market to be at least $1.50 higher than it currently is. And I was wanting to say that it was because of too much ISK being generated, but I didn't want to say anything until somebody from CCP kind of confirms that.
And is that what happened? Did it get confirmed with Quant saying that, or is that?
Well, that's enough of a qualification for me when the head econ guy comes out and says, "Hey, look, this is leading to RMT." As much as Peligro and the rest of Team Security are going out and creating tiers from all these people that are buying, right? And I've posted them. If you have that much ISK out there, it's not going to raise the price, and people are still going to try to buy.
So okay, so there's from looking at it from a company perspective, they're seeing the economy generate tons of wealth, which then creates the temptations to sell the wealth off market to other players in the form of real money. So they need to nerf that down and slow down that income generation potential that these high-end pilots have. What were those nerfs?
The nerfs that they're talking about?
Yeah, the how do these nerfs, like, what were the nerfs that actually came in? I know people have read them, but let's just go over them for people who haven't been caught up.
Oh,
Aerith, you were
geez.
on. Aerith, it's okay. Aerith, you're on CSM. How did they nerf down the this stuff?
So, well, I'll start with just the IST-based ones first. So they went after super carry and capital ratting, right? So they essentially, this is the second, third, depending on how you count it, nerf against fighter ratting. So essentially, they're trying to drop the total IST per hour of super carrier and carrier ratting, and the odds of your fighters dying are just tremendously higher. So you could make the argument that it's almost not really worth doing it now over other ratting, like just use a Vexor or something, right? Or use any other drone boat that's lower class where the drones aren't going to be hilariously expensive to lose.
Right,
Well,
because you're actually making money slower, and you're more likely to lose money because those drones are expensive, those fighters.
yeah, and you're still risking a relatively expensive asset. Maybe not in the case of carriers, but in super carriers you are. So there's a limited number of groups that can do that safely, right? To even get the ability to do super carrier ratting in a safe way, you pretty much have to have a super cap umbrella to rat under in the first place, right? This is why you've seen such a huge drop off in the drone region ratting, because they were just getting screwed over trying to do it, because they don't have the ability to respond in such a way that is a deterrent to other player groups, right? You want to have a response that even if you lose the super, they lose enough crap killing the super that it's not really worth their time, right? Who wants to go in and kill a super for even, right? People say they'll do that, like, oh, it was a better ship, so we win. But at the end of the day, you don't actually see anyone doing that repeatedly, because if you want to win the ISK war and you only want to break even, whoever's got more money wins, right? Because they're going to keep it up longer.
Right.
So can't do that.
Just to break that down for players that may not understand that, that aren't in nullsec, that means that you expend a lot of dreadnoughts, bringing them in to take down bigger targets, but you lose all those dreadnoughts because it's presumed that a reaction fleet that's waiting to protect their supers that are now under attack will jump in and take down all those dreadnoughts. And so you end up losing almost as much money, or sometimes as much money, as what you came to kill in the first place. And so that's a deterrent to do it. But not if there's no umbrella or no protection for these supers that are out there ratting.
Yeah, so renters, they can't effectively do this. So it concentrates that IST generation into regions that were already probably wealthy, that were already wildly successful. This is why you see this runaway effect in Delve. We have a massive umbrella. We have a very coordinated response. You can see that remember when PL dropped us right after downtime, they all got wiped. So yeah, you take a good lick and then you still get wiped. So that response is always there. So why do that when you can just go over here and you can moonwalk out and save all your dreads? You can kill somebody else and just have a dunk, right? So that was one of the nerfs. But forget just straight up ISPOS reckon, even the mining. So they took us and they didn't wait to see the impact of their changes because they just want to peace out and go on vacation. First, they went out of noms. They changed the timer, which was a huge change by itself, right? It massively changes null mining. Regardless of whether they say it's only the top few systems. It's like, that's bullshit. They went ahead and changed the Rorqual again, so they double nerfed it again. When the main thing about the Rorqual was always that damn panic module. Like we told them from the very beginning, the panic module was dumb. Like the Rorqual was going to be strong enough without that thing, and you would see a whole lot more dying if there wasn't a panic module. Because if you look at Delve, we didn't lose a single one in May. Not a one. Like that 9 trillion in mining and no deaths. That's fucked up. That's not about like, ooh, excavators are so strong. That is, panic is stupid and it should have never become in the game. And we told them that and they didn't listen. So now they're being forced to do these massive nerfs to PvE because, oh, mining's so strong. Well, maybe if Rorquals could actually die, less people would use them. But that's not the case. They pretty much never die unless you're completely retarded.
But okay, well, I guess that last qualifier protects your statement. But aren't there a lot of Rorquals that are dying? Because I thought there were groups that were specifically out, maybe even wormhole groups, specifically out hunting these things down.
No, like if you go look at Zkill, think about how many Rorquals are out there for a moment, mining on any given day, and then look how many actually die on Zkill. It's not even a rounding error.
Yeah, it's sort of like when Citadels and Astra Houses first came out. At the beginning, a lot of them died because it was new and something cool to do. But after a while, it's like, why even put in the effort if you gotta like fight through panic and stuff?
Yeah, I didn't realize that. So there's not as many dying as I thought there were, and it's probably because of the stasis. You're saying they're able to defend themselves, especially when there's a fleet that can react and save it while it's in panic mode.
Yeah, as long as they're in a standing fleet, as long as they have a Sino, and as long as they have a panic module, you should never die. The ones you see die, there's always some like, oh, I ignored the guy that had been sitting in local for 4 hours, or oh, I didn't fit a Sino, or oh, the ones that just died like a couple days ago, which is June, not May, they didn't notice a Sino inhibitor anchored and online next to them while they were mining. Like, really, dude? Come on, man.
Yeah, probably not a heads up. I do have a friend that died, lost 2 Rorquals. I guess a wormhole opened up a couple of systems out, and they found him before he could safely evacuate himself. Well, maybe he did evacuate himself, but evacuate his ships, he didn't do that. Yeah, so, yeah, I know, bad joke. So the nerfing then has been pretty irritating to a lot of players because they've been vocalizing, I'm dropping my accounts and leaving the game kind of stuff. And why is that? Because it seems like they're trying to do something that needs to be done. So why are people so upset?
I think most of the rage I'm seeing is based on the frequency of these nerfs, the kind of knee-jerk reactive way in which CCP is doing with little explanation. Like, I think if you had done these nerfs a little slower, you would put out a nuanced and well-reasoned explanation for why you were doing it. You would show the data, and then you would kind of soft-played it and slow-played it, and kind of what I told CCP yesterday, and we're allowed to talk about this because we actually said, could we mention this meeting? And they said yes. You boil the crab slowly, right? You don't drop a crab into boiling water. You turn that water temperature up slowly. And that's the same way with players. They're very emotional. They're very reactive. They love the Eve. So they're going to have an emotional reaction. Don't do this mini thing in a short period of time. Like, it's too much. You're not able to really delineate what reaction to a change is what. Like, you're not going to be able to see it in the metric cleanly. So you're not going to know which knob you turned that's actually caused the thing. You're going to have dynamic changes in how players interact in null based on load carrying capacity of each system. That's far wide ranging. It's not going to be just goons. You're going to impact other people, right? You're going to have time zone implications by, nerfing colossal respawn rate. Well, great. Like, all the people that come after Euros get screwed. Like, that's what you're doing in some of these high-end systems. Like, so you're making players suffer because of decisions you made a year ago, and you're still not nerfing the right thing. So that's why players are upset. But then you take all that, and then you have someone like CCP Quant come on and say, oh, it's this super arrogant, we know better than you reply from a data guy that didn't even know his MER was wrong for a year until we had to point it out to him multiple times. Like, yeah, dude, maybe you shouldn't be the guy talking about the top 1% of 1% when you can't even calculate 1% until we tell you how. So he should have never replied. CCP should have said, radio silence is that community team and PR team, and start managing this effectively. And they haven't done that thus far.
Yeah, it does seem like he was trying to take some of the heat that was going on to the devs that were announcing the changes, like saying, hey, look, we've looked at it, and here's some of the statistics, and you don't need to be blasting them all the time. If you guys want to attack me, go ahead.
Well, I think that was probably noble of him to some degree, but he approached it completely wrong. Like, we don't trust your data in the first place, Quant. Then you cherry-picked data in his post. What? Like, why are you cherrying? Like, you knew if you cherry-picked the worst big ticker in a super cap and use that as justification for your argument, everyone was going to get pissed. Like, any normal, rational human being would know that that's not the argument to make. But we inherently don't trust him anyway because he's been proven wrong so many times in his own economic report. So how about engage the players, talk to the players about what the appropriate solution is, and even if you intend to ignore them and do it, at least give the lip service that you listen to them, rather than slamming in changes from, quite frankly, one of the devs that players love to hate the most, which is Fozzie. I try to defend Fozzie when I can. He tries to do what I believe he thinks is right for the game, so I want to caveat that for everyone. I'm not a Fozzie hater. But this was handled all wrong. Like, the way they rolled it out, the justification for doing so, the data they relied on, they're knee-jerking, and rather than taking a well-reasoned, rational approach, they're just slamming and change after change after change. because they want to peace out and go on vacation. That's the perception.
Right. Well, and that may be the messaging that people are getting. I'm not close enough to it to know, but it did seem out of character for him to kind of push so hard. But then again, the arena of Reddit is a very emotional arena. That's where there's a lot of emotion. In fact, I think somebody mentioned that, I think it was Noisy, that EVE Online forums, where official statements are usually made, was actually a lot calmer and more discussion oriented than where they posted this. So they're in
that's what Noisy said before the episode started.
Yeah, it you know, as a longtime EVE player, I started in 2009. It's amazing that I can actually say that the EVE Online forums aren't the worst place in the world. And the second thing is, I'm looking at Reddit, and they're pointing at a 60-page forum thread as being like tremendously big. 60 pages? Does that even qualify as a thread? Not. So
well, not if we don't show up, it doesn't count.
Yeah, so I mean, so basically, it's like I'm getting a little bit emotional about this, just reading all the crap coming out of Reddit. Some of it does have some legitimacy, but the signal to noise ratio is horrible.
Well, we've been saying this for years. Reddit is not a community. Reddit is not a sounding board. Like, Reddit is always going to be the festering shithole of EVE, right? That's what Reddit is. And CCP, unfortunately, has been legitimizing Reddit by posting there for a while, using it as a primary feedback mechanism. And so they've created their own monster. They should have never really left the official forums or official communication channels other than lighthearted, informal conversations. You shouldn't have Quant going on a forum where everyone's already pitchforking and throwing a grenade in there. Like, how does that help your company? Even if you think you're right, if even 10 people unsubbed because you did that, you have screwed your company over. You've done a disservice to the game. Like, you guys eat based on this. We don't. So just be the professional. Don't go lob grenades like that.
Yeah, I mean, going back in time to before I started playing EVE, this is reminding me of what happened with EQ2 Flames, where the company, where SOE would go on there all the time, Smedley would go on there, make posts. It was like really good, and then EQ2 Flames just burned them, and then they just left. And that CCP may be at a point now where they need to do the same thing with Reddit and just leave it.
I would agree with that. I don't think they will. I think there's too many people within CCP that like participating in Reddit. I don't think that's going to happen. I would support them if they did that. I think they need to have a well-moderated area, a safe space, if you will. CCP is badly in need of a safe space, and that's what the Evo forums are. They're so heavily moderated that it's kind of a joke to some degree, but you're able to filter out the non-constructive conversation far better than Reddit. Whereas Reddit now, all it's probably doing is costing you subscriptions, because if anyone Googles EVE and they see all these Reddit threads just flaming CCP page after page after page, I don't think there was a positive thread in the last 2 days right now. And yesterday, what we were trying to counsel CCP, you need to have some positive, hopeful message. Show some new change that you've showed the CSM that you haven't showed the players yet. Give the players hope that you have a vision that you're executing on, that, yeah, you're going to make a few mistakes sometimes, but you do react well sometimes. Let me draw attention to Falcon's reply. They saw that they had impacted the players with their script change. They recognized it. They addressed it quickly. They put out a message. They said they're going to reimburse you. That was perfect. They made a mistake. They addressed it quickly. They communicated well. They talked about what they were going to do for the players. Perfect. Falcon handled that admirably. Then you have Quant. It's like, there's certain devs you should not let interact with the players directly. I think he's on the list now.
I'd like to point out that interacting in Reddit might have been better a little bit back, but now it's really hard for a dev team. I'm a dev in my day job. The right place right now, if you really, really want to have a touch with customers directly, is probably Twitch. Get on there and live stream to them, and that's currently better. A year from now, it might have gone the direction of Reddit, and there might be something else that's a better choice. But you got to keep up on this stuff, and you have to watch and know when the right thing to do is to pack up and shift your resources. And never forget, you do need to support your actual official forums. I wish my day job did a better job with that.
Mhm. Well, it's interesting because to me, Reddit is an emotional place because it's in my opinion, it's being moderated very badly and has been for a long time because they like these flames, right? Because this keeps people coming, so they're growing the controversies, and moderation is a big part of growing the fire or damping it down into a smolder. It depends on what you're after, and I think the people moderating Reddit, I've always said this, don't do a good job of that. I guess they may see it as, hey, this is a free space, people can just talk and do whatever they want. I guess so, but if a lot of players are going to get their information from Reddit, must be some like civic responsibility to at least try to improve it so that it actually has a good noise to information ratio. That said, when devs do talk on Reddit, because maybe they like it, I don't know if they do, it seemed like they're trying to match the tone of the players, like to get real with them. And maybe that's why Quant's voice when he spoke there seemed a little bit out of character, in that he was saying like, let me beat you guys back because you guys are, going nuts and it's not as bad as you think.
Well, I think there's merit to his argument that maybe, I wouldn't say the top 1% of 1% because that's just stupid, but that the top 1% are what's represented on Reddit as far as the loudest and most argumentative and most reactionary of the players. What the problem with that line of thinking is, if you try to dismiss that top 1%, those are the 1% that are most likely to get you the PC Gamer article, that are most likely to get you positive media coverage. Like, for example, we could be talking about all the great things CCP is doing right now, and the thousands of people that listen to this after would have a great image of CCP. I'm not doing that because it's not appropriate. CCP deserves to be flamed right now because they are fucking up. So when they fuck up, we should tell them they fuck up. Now, when I talk to them in CSM, I'm very professional. I try to keep it very nice. But quite frankly, right now, I'm pretty much going dark on them. Like I told them 2 weeks ago and direct IM to Andy, you've got a problem coming here. You're about to have drama. No response. Okay. Like, I warned you. I did what I could through communication channels. I don't agree with almost anything you're doing right now, but it is your right to do it. I'm just a focus group as far as I'm concerned. So if you ignore us, okay, but you need to be ready for the consequences of that actions. And when I say me, I don't mean goons. I mean the players and the representatives of players. You're going to get negative media attention. That is going to cost you subscribers. That costs you revenue. If you're okay with that, rock on, but you shouldn't be. And the only thing you have to do differently is communicate better, communicate reasoning, and roll it out slower. You can still make the same decisions. You're just implementing them completely wrong.
So let me get this straight. This is not how you talk to CCP generally when you're meeting with them?
No, I try to be pretty much diplomatic. I'm good cop because there's no point in beating up on them in private, right? Like, it doesn't serve anyone. It's not constructive. Like, I try to give them honest feedback. And like I told Fozzie once, and he actually said this makes him just trust me less. I said, I will always tell you the truth the first time. When I come to you the second time, I'm going to meta the shit out of you. Just full disclosure. But the first time, I will only come to you with pure motives and the truth. If you ignore me, then the second time, it's not going to be that way. Just like when they ignored me, telling them there's going to be drama, trying to give them feedback that they could head this off, they ignored me. Well, now I'm feeding the drama by being on this show. That's just how it has to work. Like, sometimes you have to get their attention. It's like sometimes you have to hit them because you love them.
So you're metaing the show, leveraging the 380 people watching to make sure that you're strong.
There's a few thousand people that will watch it later. But yes, like everything drives the narrative, just like I was on the meta show last weekend.
Sounds a little dysfunctional to me.
Of course, the CSM is very dysfunctional. The relationship for the players and CCP is completely dysfunctional.
Well, who knows? Like, there seems to be a certain population that's angry. Like, how deep do you think it goes? Is this a representative group that's angry? Because one of the things that Quant was saying was, look, it's just the 1%. The top richest 1% are the ones complaining the hardest and loudest in this arena, whereas the other 99% are going about their business thinking like, hey, that's pretty cool. They're nerfing down the income potential of these 1%ers because now maybe my income won't be affected as badly. Like, how representative is the rage?
I think the rage is representative far more than 1%. Would I say it's 20 or 30%? No, I definitely wouldn't make that distinction. I would say the rage is probably representative of more than 5%, maybe less than 15. Because you got to remember, the rage does filter to others. It's like the old customer relations in real life. Like for every pissed off customer, they tell 10. For every happy customer, they tell 2 or 3. So pissed off customers have a disproportionate effect on your bottom line. They have a disproportionate effect on how your customer base views you. And eventually that adds up, right? When the riots happened, how many people do you think actually knew all of the details that were shooting the monument that day? Half the people probably showed up and went, hey, there's a bunch of people that are pissed off shooting a monument. I should do that too. Let's group think. Let's herd think. Like, that's how it works.
I remember back when they had the riots around Jeddah, and they destroyed that one statue by shooting at it. Nothing was happening to it, but it was symbolic, I guess. And I remember hearing, I was in adhocracy at the time, hearing, and this is a girl that had, a woman that had a blog called, a great title, Wench with a Wrench. And she was part of adhocracy. And she just wrote in Corp, yeah, I just went to the Congo line. And, and that was when players would kind of follow each other and orbit this statue and just shoot at it. Nothing was happening, but they were just doing it as a symbol of protest. And I said, why'd you go? And she said, well, there was nothing else to do. So most of the crowd may not be like as engaged as, the people who are leading the charge.
I would agree. But again, it's a disproportionate effect. I'm not saying you cater to that 1%. That's not healthy either. I'm saying that when you've done a series of actions that is completely like self-inflicted wounds, and then you keep pouring gasoline on it, thinking you're going to turtle up, because this is what CCP's been doing lately. They just turtle up. They try to ignore it till it goes away. But there's still a lasting impact. Just because the threads stop doesn't mean people aren't pissed at you. Doesn't mean you didn't cost yourself subs. Stop doing self-inflicted wounds. There's enough people that are going to leave EVE over time. We don't need to add fuel to the fire by making them mad at CCP. I've always counseled that players should be mad at players. When players get mad at CCP, that's not good for any of us. We lose new people. We lose alphas converting. We lose veterans. It's always been bad for the game when CCP is the enemy. That's not healthy.
All right. So by virtue of that fact, we should probably change subjects. And but this is really interesting. We need to kind of have a catharsis and get this stuff out. And I think there's probably no one better at expressing this than Aerith. So we'll go with it as long as it lasts. And there are a lot of people. There's actually way too much activity in the comment section for me to keep up. But with 380 people, it's a lot of questions coming. So you can tell it's not only a lot of people, but a lot of emotion for most of those people. Noisy, do you had something?
Yeah. Not only do we want to, or should CCP just be listening to people, complain, but the people that are complaining are basically the whales in this game. In free-to-play games, it's called, there's the concept of the whale, and these are the people that are spending the most money in your game, and that's kind of why you want to kind of not make sure they don't get too upset. And so I guess I would be a whale. I've got I pay for 3 accounts, plus I go to 2 conventions a year, so they're making a lot of money off of me. A lot of these people that are out there complaining, they not only do they have carriers or maybe even super carriers, they've got 4 or 5 additional accounts that they pay for, or that they are supplying the Plex for other people to pay for their accounts. So they do have kind of a disproportional impact. The thing is, it's if it depends just how many of them are there that CCP has to rely on for financial security.
Yeah. Sorry, I was exchanging notes back and forth and trying to catch up on some questions and stuff like that. All right. Well, what we've covered so far, just to catch people up who are joining us live, you can always hear the podcast version of this, which will have all this from the beginning. And it's a great show. It's solid information and, great analysis. Is that the income potential of nullsec is really high. People are making a lot of money using carriers and Rorquals, and so those got nerfed back quite a bit. The explanation was that the income generation capability was too high, and PvPers who use carriers are saying why are you balancing the game around PvE? You should balance PvE around the ships, instead of the ships around PvE, because it affects us when we use them against each other, PvP. And is that a good argument, by the way?
Sure. I mean, I definitely think it's appropriate to try to keep PvP and PvE balance separate. I would agree, though, that carries are probably a little overpowered right now against subcaps. So there is probably some little nerf warranted. I wouldn't necessarily say it's this form of nerf. But again, it's not even like that I'm trying to question the decisions that CCP's made. I'm questioning the way they made them and the way they've communicated them and the way they've reacted to the player's reaction about them. That's fundamentally what's causing all of this. It's all self-inflicted wounds. I
see. So the irritation is really the problem with communication and messaging and even process on how to deal with your customers.
Yeah, like CCP, and CCP's acknowledged to us that balance has not been the priority it should have been. I think CCP is taking steps to address that. We're allowed to say about that much and not much more. So I do think that there will be good things coming from CCP in this area. But first, how about we diffuse the current tensions? How about we get some constructive threads, some constructive ways to resolve this? Because I do think they're being too heavy-handed, too arbitrary, and if they're only basing it on some is faucets and mining data, maybe that's not the best way to balance. Maybe let's talk about what's coming in the future, why you're balancing in the way you are, because it right now it just seems knee-jerk, and the players are responding to that.
Yeah, and we're going into summer with this stuff, so it looks like this. I wonder if it will get resolved before people start to disappear on vacations, both players and CCP. Are we riding this wave out into the summer as it dissipates, or is there going to be, you think, follow-ups to try to say, hey, look, we're not communicating well, but we'll fix it?
I think they'll probably put out some token statement at most. They're going all out. Like in 2 weeks, all their vacations start, and they're pretty heads down with what they're doing. So I think CCP is going to turtle up. They may make a token statement, and that's probably about it.
Seamus?
So yeah, from a game design perspective, just to back up just one topic, from a game design perspective, I think it would make sense to focus more on rebalancing player versus environment rather than player ships themselves. On the other hand, as a high security Care Bear, I do tend to be a little bit biased about PvE rebalances, but yeah, I do have to agree. Rebalance PvE rather than the ships themselves if that's what the issue is.
Well, this is a good chance to do a little bit of a segue into Ask the Professor, and that is the professor from Eve University, Seamus. There's many more, but he's someone that knows a lot about the mechanics and environments and rules of the game and stuff like that. I wanted to bring up this thing called a tick, and that is how income is measured. But what is a tick? So let's ask
bounty payments.
Yeah, what is a tick?
Basically, whenever you kill anything that has a bounty on its head, whether it's an NPC or it's a player, you're not paid the bounty immediately. Rather, all of the bounties that you earn are packaged into 20-minute groups. So when anybody's talking about ticks in terms of ratting or bounties or whatever, it's 20-minute ticks there. Not to be confused with physics ticks, which are once per second.
So when CCP or anybody says, "Oh, I heard players say, oh, I make good amount of ISK. I made 20 million per tick. That's 20 million per 20 minutes.
20 minutes.
Okay, so when I was ratting in nullsec, which was all of 10 minutes, it seemed like I could get anywhere between 18 and 25 million per tick. And what came out recently was we're finding out that people are making how much per tick? Anyone remember? I think it's...
Well, he cherry-picked 270, but that was a fake number. Like, that's like one guy, perfect conditions.
Yeah. Quant did later edit his comment on Reddit to indicate that was the high number, and the average... He seems to claim the average is around 140 to 170. Let me see if I can dig it up again.
Yeah, 140 to 170 was the number that he did. I guess it was for super ratting.
Yeah.
Which is about right. That's about what we see in Dell. That's more accurate.
Okay, so instead of saying in optimal conditions you can get up to 270, it's more like usual conditions. People who are doing this are making this amount.
140 to 170 million per 20 minutes.
Okay, still that income generation potential. Every 20 minutes you're making 200, or sorry, 100, let's say 150 million, compared to what a guy in a battleship would be able to do, which is about 20 to 25 million, is a huge difference.
Yeah, about a factor of 6.
But like, how did the, and granted, I did some ratting a while ago. What changed? Is it the value or the availability of the NPCs that you're shooting, or is it that you're using supers to do it, or a combination of both?
You're using super to just do it, and the way the fighter work, you can basically alpha a battleship. So it just, the way the mechanics worked out was just right.
Okay, so it's kind of a fluke that it's this effective.
I don't know if I'd say a fluke, but I would say the mechanics have come together in a perfect storm. Yeah, but I wouldn't suggest that it should be a whole lot lower, right? You shouldn't go below 100 million an hour on a super carrier rating. I don't think that's necessarily appropriate.
Right, because you are risking it after all in certain conditions.
Yeah, and you do lose fighters. Like, you are going to lose some stuff.
And to be clear, the super is what, I guess, well, it depends on mineral costs, but right now it's, let's just say it's like 20 billion. So you are risking 20 billion to make that kind of income, and you are losing some fighters, which are, I guess, if you're using a super, using bombers or the bigger fighters, whatever they're called now, and those are more expensive. Yeah,
I feel like CCP completely ignored the fact that you lose materials doing this. Like, they just kind of glossed over that point.
Still, it just seems like that is a huge amount of money, and people have figured out, we own the territory that is lucrative as compared to other territory, which is not. So if we're going to own this territory, we have to maximize our profit. So it kind of seems like you guys had shown how much, or maybe other people had shown how much money could be taken out of nullsec through this ratting and mining, and other groups, especially the ratting, especially in Deckline. It seems like that's where a ton of NPC killing is going to generate money.
Yeah, but you have to remember, it has taken a tremendous amount of infrastructure and planning on our part to make that possible, right? Had to have a massive plan. We had to have massive trillions and trillions in infrastructure spending to make that possible, right? Like, if you're a super, you want to go home somewhere you can dock, right? And preferably without even jumping, right? So you got keeps. But capital ratting, which is really kind of, I think, the big backbone of this, is we have Fortizars almost everywhere in Delve. Like, the funny little fact that most people don't know is almost every Delve system has a Fortizar in it. Don't even forget the Astra houses. There's a Fortizar almost everywhere, so you can go dock. And that takes a large amount of investment, a large amount of logistics and planning. So yes, we have optimized it. We have shown what is possible, and everyone else is just playing catch up. But like I said earlier in the cast, like, I don't want CCP going, goons are so good, we're gonna have to nerf all of Eve. It's like, Jesus, all of Eve is gonna get mad when you do that.
Well, could it be they're trying to say, like, oops, everybody, the secret's out now, everybody knows how to do this, and we can see that they're moving in that direction. We need to stop this before everybody else starts generating that amount of income.
Sure, but then that just, and I'm not saying they're wrong to do that, but I'm saying that's just going to infuriate the players even more, because Goons had a year. We've been, totally optimizing the mechanics for so long. We've gotten such a huge lead across everyone else. I mean, you just look how fortified Delve, it's retarded, that now everyone can't catch up because you're going to nerf them too much.
Yeah. Now, I noticed one little comment. Matterall's is evolved past playing Eve, and that's not true. I don't rat. I never have been good at it. I fall asleep when I do it. So ratting is just not something I've done, nor mining. I think I did, but I walked away. The point is, a lot of people still play Eve, but income generation in Eve is a whole thing, because you need to have, one of the barriers in this game is money. You need to have money to buy equipment so that you can participate. And the higher you go in the hierarchy of groups, as far as, like, let's say elitism, the more expensive the equipment becomes. So if you're going to be dominating a certain area, you need to be an elite group. But to belong to an elite group, you have to buy very expensive equipment. So it's a cycle. And so this affects a lot of players, especially PvPers, because on the one hand, it's affecting their ships that they use in combat against each other. But on the other hand, it hurts their ability to keep up with the amount of equipment that they need to buy. So that that's why this is kind of a sensitive topic for people, but it's also, according to Aerith, been communicated badly and hurriedly or quickly. So it's
well, it's even
good
worse than that.
competitive.
Like CCP buried it. Like when they told the CSM, they told the CSM in a channel they knew most CSM weren't in kind of like an offhand way. So I'm not accusing him of really trying to bury the lead, but they buried the lead. I'm pretty sure they knew that.
All right. Did they bury it by breaking the skill queue? Let's move on to a different topic now. And that is what in the heck happened that people's and random people's skill queues just stopped?
They tried to attempt to fix it Ghost Training, and they screwed it up. That's pretty much how that went.
And they tried to do it in the middle of the day so that they wouldn't give anybody any advance notice, and it would just like fix it all automatically, and nobody could take advantage of it, right?
Right, which is funny because, and it's not funny because if you think about it, the way that Ghost Training works, somebody, I'm not going to explain how you do it, but the result is that you have an alpha and then you turn it back onto Omega, and you get to keep all the training speed of the Omega. For people who know Eve, they would understand what I'm talking about. So that means that if they said, okay, we need to fix this and we're going to fix it on Tuesday, everybody would turn on their accounts on a Monday to make sure they didn't lose out on all that training. So they really couldn't offer advanced warning. This
Quite
is all,
possibly.
If they had, you'd have had a Plex run because all of the major farmers would have went and bought like 1,000 Plex to turn theirs to Omega, logging them all in real quick so they could actually cash out. Yeah, like they should have stealth nerf. That was totally appropriate, but it feels like they ran a script they never tested, which is unfortunate. But they did react well to that problem. They addressed it quickly. They're going to refund people, so I feel like they handled that well.
right. And then there seemed to be a certain amount of forgiveness there. Maybe it's a different sector of people because it's not just the 1%, according to CCP, that's complaining about the change or the hiccup. It was very broad-based, affected a lot of different people, and we couldn't really figure out what why certain accounts were.
Well, it was different because they addressed it, like they communicated.
Yeah, there's a lot to be said for owning up to your mistake.
Mm-hmm. So Carneros, you think that was a difference?
Yeah, I think it was purely owning up to their mistake and being upfront about it and proactive. That's all it was.
Yeah, well,
Yeah,
it's
like
easier when
Yeah, just to go out of Eve for a moment, this same sort of issue came up with No Man's Sky and Hello Games. When the game launched, there were a lot of features that players had been expecting that seemed to be promised in the marketing materials, and those features didn't actually show up once the game went live. All right, and Hello Games was pretty bad at dealing with the communications issues, and they got a lot of flack for that. It's gotten better in recent months, but those early months were not good.
Well, it's also easier to own up to a technical error than it is a balancing error, because one is logistics or just programming and some script that you need to fix and stuff like that, and you can say like, yeah, that went off, clearly it had unintended consequences, we'll fix it, as opposed to balancing, which is calls into account judgment and knowing the nuances of the game and stuff like that.
Well, even then, the blowback can still be managed with proper communication, in my opinion.
Yeah. Noisy, did you have some?
Yeah, it's like CCP is so inconsistent with their communications. I mean, one of the wonders, from last year in gaming was that our player base accepted having a free-to-play option. I mean, most times, if a game introduces something like that, the player base is up in arms. But because CCP was so good at communicating and giving their rationale, we accepted it. And we have and then just like with this skill point training, it's like, oh, we understand that you admitted your mistake. You did something that you probably shouldn't have done. QA sucked, but we'll accept that. But what we were talking about for the previous 20 minutes, it's because there was not the communication, everybody's up in arms.
Well, Yeah, and again, we may be comparing apples and oranges as far as what was at stake, but and let's just describe what happened and describe the background of ghost training. Does anybody understand it well? If not, I can explain it.
Basically, ghost training refers to being a putting it in terms of before free to play, before Alpha and Omega. Ghost training originally referred to being able to train skills while your account was not actually subscribed. So you weren't paying for subscription time, and yet you were still training skill points. With the advent of free to play and EVE Online, that definition has only changed slightly, referring more to training skills outside of the alpha set and or training skills at an omega rate without actually being subscribed.
Right. So basically, it's free skill points. Doesn't really matter if it's a few people, but when it gets to be, when you find out that there are people who farm this and basically have hundreds of accounts and are using this benefit to create wealth that otherwise wouldn't be generated for free, it kind of makes people upset. And the other thing is it's very difficult to figure out who's doing it on purpose and who accidentally did it. So there's no way to be punitive about it. You can't say, don't do this, because they don't know who has the actual intent to do it and who accidentally did it because they decided to resub. Which means that
I would disagree there. Like, you could just say the top 10 guys that had 100+ accounts, fuck you, you're getting banned. Like, you could do that, or just, we're going to claw back the money. You don't have to do everyone. Just do the top 10.
Or the significant outliers like that, yeah.
Or just do the people who have the 200 character farms, and you can show that they were actually then buying the extractors and then selling it. I mean, that paper trail is just so obvious, you should be able to follow that.
Yeah, because this now has economic effects, given that we now have skill extractors and skill injectors nowadays. So anybody who's doing ghost training and is purchasing skill extractors, as Noisy says, yeah, that's probably with intent.
Okay. So again, ghost training is something that has to do with your account and whether you're subscribed and paying the company for access to EVE or not, and getting some of the benefits of paying for the subscription without actually paying. Excuse me. So that was a fix that went kind of wrong, and that was an error, and it looks like nobody got too upset about it, but it was kind of good that people noticed it right away and warned other people. And there probably will be some kind of compensation coming in the future, which is really, positive thing for a lot of players who feel that they may have gotten cheated.
Yeah, when this sort of thing comes up, CCP is pretty good about compensating players for that. It may not come right away, but they're very good about getting to it eventually.
It would be a great burn the witch moment, redirect the players' anger at other players if they just offered up like, hey, we did our research, we've banned 20 guys running this many accounts and sees this much ISK. The players are like, yay, burn the witch, right? That'd be great.
Yeah, or leave them in the game and say, there they are, put bounties on them if you want. All right. So we got about 15 more minutes, and I did want to cover a few more topics that are out there, Aerith, especially since we have you here. But there are some other changes to the game as well, and that is another nerf, and that is to pirate battleships or pirate faction battleships. And those are the battleships that are supposed to be combinations of two Empire battleships. So characteristics of the Galenti Empire with characteristics of the Minmatar Empire make a different type of battleship that became so cheap that nullsec and lowsec as well, but actually nullsec became the problem. They used fleets of those things, and normally they're not supposed to be so easy to get. Again, these are they were very expensive battleships, and the income generation that I talked about earlier that you need to keep up, it would cost you a lot to keep up because these pirate battleships are so expensive. But if those aren't expensive, there's kind of a balance problem there. And so we've seen a lot of pirate battleships in use, and we really shouldn't have. So CCP has changed that by, well, how have they changed that? Let me let somebody else talk.
Oh, they changed the drop rate. They changed the cost. I mean, let me just skip all that for a moment. If CCP has said this in the past, that balancing based on price isn't good balancing, and this feels like that. Like, okay, great. Let's say you triple the price. Is that going to prevent us from using them? No. Okay, so What's the real problem? The fact that they're so much better than anything else out there right now. Like between them and T3s, that's it. That's all you need. You don't need other ships. Like we're running Alpha Fleet, so we're trying to kind of buck the meta and get back to our old Alpha Fleet, yay. But faction battleships are flat out better than any other option right now. That's why they're used. Like cost is a secondary consideration.
Well, that's a good point because they're really only nerfing the acquisition of them. They're not really nerfing their ability.
Well, wasn't one of the problems like for large scale nullsec warfare the availability of ships? Because I think it was Goons at one point were trying to use Tempest Fleet issues, but they just ran out of ships. They couldn't get enough of them in order to sustain that kind of use.
That was only a problem because we tried to move on a dime. Like we tried to literally change doctrine overnight, which we can't do. We always need about a month to change a doctrine or more to acquire. So it is not a concern if you're actually doing it long term. It definitely is if you're going to try to say, hey, we're going to run Tempest Fleet issues next week. Okay, you're fucked. But if I can just clear JITA for a couple months, I'm good to go.
Yeah, I think that NC had that doctrine too. Go ahead. Sorry, Carneris, go ahead.
Can I confirm that there's no plans to do anything about Navy faction battleships? It's just pirate faction?
Yeah, I keep and the thing is, there's a lot of like code words in Eve. Oh my God, so many code words in Eve. So when people say faction battleships, people who are true to the actual faction battleships would consider that Empire battleships that are of the Navy and also pirate battleships. But when people refer to faction battleships, they're usually talking about the pirate flavor because those are the ones that are more unique. But yeah. So they're not going to touch the Navy ones, the ones from Empire, but they are focusing on the pirate battleship. And it's interesting. It's an interesting point. They're making them more expensive, so it seems like they wouldn't be on these big fleets. Or if you did take a big fleet and you lost it, you lost a lot more. And maybe that's a way of making people not use them as much. But they aren't really affecting the way the battleship works or nerfing in any way its effectiveness.
That's going to be the large problem. If you're not changing the meta, because the meta isn't about price, the meta is about functionality. So if you're not going to change that, then their use isn't going to change. Like everyone has enough money that going from, I don't know, I'm losing another 20 billion is for a big fight. Like, does any big group care? No, we don't care at all.
Well, not right now, especially if those big groups are able to generate so much income that the price becomes a non-issue, since this, the state is making so much money and the state is replacing your ships, then really you're not taking a hit as an individual of that state to participate.
It's all SRP.
Yeah. So at some point, though, if you say, okay, well, we'll have the state make less money and we'll have these battleships cost more, at some point they'll affect their usage.
Yeah, but it would have to be like 5 times or more their current cost or so, and then I think you'd see a pretty good big change.
Yeah, because the problem with actually affecting the way the battleship works is that you then make it less usable in other scenarios that you may not foresee, right? Because all this stuff is a big balance, and it's a big pool of ingredients. And when some things get better, other things get worse because they're eclipsed by the thing that got better, and so they keep moving it around.
We're expecting a pretty large shift when they rebalance T3s. We're expecting that is going to shift the meta to some degree because it is a rock paper scissors. So that may have a larger impact on the usage of faction battleships than the price.
Mm-hmm. Well, we're getting word that there are a lot of fights out there right now. And so if you guys are not participating in EVE right now, it might be a good time to get in and join some of these fleets that are out there fighting. And we also know that it's amazing. We have great numbers. I attribute it to Aerith and the guests that we have the Alliance tournament that's also being broadcast right now. And so people are probably watching that as well. And we're also up against European football. There's a big soccer match in the UK that people are tuned in for. So even with all those hindrances, we've managed to claw up quite an audience, at least for the live show. And I'm sure a lot of people will catch this after it's been recorded. So very interesting. Oh, Adam West, is that the Batman? Apparently has passed away, if I'm reading my notes right. Let me just check that real quick. I have a story about it. That's the reason. The reason I'm actually stopping is because I need to check that. Because Yeah, because I work with his son. His son works at my company, and his son is one of the nicest guys I've ever met in my life. And he's, you know, has every reason not to be a nice guy because he's got great looks and all that. But he's such a nice guy, so I feel really bad for him. But you can't feel too bad for anybody that makes it to 88. Okay, a little bit more, Eve, before we take off. We have about 10 minutes. This has been a really good show, and I'd hate to end it on a really lousy note, but let's see what else we have out there. I guess Vendetta has been killed, and that is one of those really, what faction are Vendettas? They're I can't think of it. It's the ones
Serpentis,
in
I think. Let me double check.
Serpentis. You're right. No, you're right. Serpentis Nyx, basically. So it's a Serpentis flavor of Nyx, and that is a pirate capital ship or super capital ship.
It's a ratting fit with some really expensive modules on there.
Yeah. So that cost the pilot about 180 billion, and it's ratting fit, which tells you something, right? Like people are actually using these really high value ships to basically to make money, not for combat or prestige.
Whenever I see multiple officer modules worth over 10 billion each on a ratting ship, I always turn my head.
Is that the sign of what? Bad design or?
Oh, it could be could be
behavior.
that it could be that the player is a Russian petroleum magnate in his day life. Could mean that he's just really, really successful PvE moneymaker. It could mean a lot of things. Could mean he has a rich friend. I don't know, but it's just interesting.
Could just be somebody that's super, super rich and naive that doesn't need to do PvE, that was out doing research. Like, I'm always afraid, like every once in a while on Dock My Titan, to go do some research, see like what can be done for our PvEers, like what's the optimum thing. And I'm always afraid like this blinged out Officer Titan is going to get ganked because I'm just out there doing research. So I'm really bad at it because I'm not used to using it like that.
Maybe he's trying to validate CCP Quant's numbers on Reddit.
Yeah, it's going to be hilarious when that thing dies, though.
Well, what's the name of the pilot so we can?
I actually use 3 or 4 different pilots with it.
Okay.
Like I have multiple Titan pilots that can pilot multiple. Yeah, so I just move it around because I used a Pony Express model. I was the first Goon Titan to delve because I Pony Expressed it using multiple characters straight down before anyone. Like I was just like, fuck LSH, no fucks given.
Yeah. So I was wondering what when people were going to be doing that, like saying I'm just going to use characters to get around jump restrictions.
I've done it from day one.
So just to make sure I understand that correctly, basically the first character jumps the Titan to the next point, passes the Titan off to the next character. That character then jumps the Titan to the next point, and so on. Do I have that right?
Yeah, usually you do a couple jumps, but yeah, basically Pony Express.
Well, and the funny thing is this became possible recently because you have now skill injectors, so you can create pilots that are specialized to just do that one ship instead of having to have those many characters, I guess, purchased or whatever.
I guess if you're a scrub, I guess, yeah.
Money is not a concern to you, is it?
No, it isn't.
Yeah. What is the financier of the Imperium? I'll just give you the broad title. What are you guys up to?
Right now we're doing a lot of the planning for refinery, so we're making sure that the plans that we have are correct, and we're doing a lot of the acquisition for that. So we tend to be 6 months out at least for strategic decisions, usually more, but in this case we're doing a lot of the preparation for that, figuring out how we're going to do it, the economic models we're going to use, how that's going to be applied for our member base, how that's going to be applied for puppies, that sort of thing.
All right, just I'm doing something now. I'm subscribing to my own show. If you guys feel like you want to support the show, there's a couple ways to do it. One is to subscribe to the channel. The other way is to find Patreon/Matt Terrell, and that's what the funding that goes into the show. Sorry to plug that. We're going to end up wrapping up with Aerith, and I wanted to move into the last part of the show. But it's too bad that we breached that topic at the very end, Eric, because the stuff that you guys do with money is so interesting. But it doesn't seem like, and I don't know if you're having mercy on the game or if you guys, because you could really wreak havoc right now, couldn't you?
Yeah, I've been super busy in real life. So is Weaseler. I think Corner's been big. Like we've all been really, really busy in real life for like the last few months. Like I've been working a mega merger kind of on a corporate level. So yeah, like I just haven't had time. So when I do have time, I'm logging in doing alliance things. We're not trying to plan. We do have some tentative ideas for what we want to do, like not a Bernjita, but like something else on that level. We just started floating that. So we'll have something, but yeah, nothing in the next month or two.
It still seems like if you guys were, if Goonswarm were as bad for the game as people think, you guys could really damage the game by just making the markets go nuts. I imagine you have that much wealth saved up.
Oh yeah, we used to have a plan we called the nuke for when CCP did something so egregious that we couldn't forgive to kill the game, like or to force the beginning of the death spiral. We called it the nuke, and some changes since then have made that less practical. But back then, it would have been extremely effective.
So then you have like think tanked how to destroy Eve.
Yeah, of course. Why? I mean, duh. Like
well,
to be clear, I'm not saying that we want Eve dead. Like this is the only game for us right now. Like we do not want Eve to die. We want to attract more players to Eve. We want CCP to be well respected and regarded, so that more people come to Eve. But yeah, like you always do that. Like for example, the nuke, since you can't really do it anymore. Originally, you have to remember that there was limited station slots around in HiSec. So the NPC stations, you only had so many slots, right? And those slots could only be filled for 30 days. So we had done the math between Plex prices, and I think Plex prices at the time were like, I want to say 700 million or something like that, maybe a little bit less. So we'd figured out how much ISK would it take to jack Plex prices. At the time, we wanted to hit a minimum of 1.8 billion, which would have been roughly 2.5 times where they were at the time, because that was the level we felt that the average player would not have enough baseline income to be able to afford it. So that way subs would drop. Then we wanted to fill up all of the slots in HiSec, and it wasn't shuttles. We had figured out a different thing. The original plan was shuttles, but then when it was something else. And so we figured out there was only about 1 trillion ISK to fill every slot, basically within about half of HiSec, with trash materials to lock up all the slots for 30 days. So all production in Eve would have ground to a halt because there wasn't any nullsec production then. So you'd have killed all that baseline income. So we called it the nuke, and we figured we could have probably done a 15% sub drop just by doing the nuke.
Yikes. Did you guys ever come close to pulling the trigger?
No, we've never had that level of acrimony with, well, I mean, some of us have, but I don't think anyone in the Jubal has ever had that level of acrimony to CCP.
That's I always kind of cringe and laugh at that, but all the Eve is polluted with a lot of language. It's funny because international bad words. So Eve is polluted with a lot of bad words that you can hear in corps and in alliances and stuff like that. And one of the things they say about people who are money grabbing constantly is they call them Jews, right?
Well, that's not what. So internally, so it's not a derogatory term for us. So like a lot of people call it crabbing, but that's a more limited term. Crabbing refers to active PVE ISK generation, whereas when we refer to Jewing in the Jubal, we refer to economic activity. Doesn't mean it could be active like ratting. It could be market manipulation. It could be passive PI. It can refer to lots of things. So it's an overall term to represent ISK and wealth accumulation in Eve.
But it's a combination of Jew and Cabal?
Yeah.
Okay. So basically it's the finance team.
It's evolved into the finance team, but it was originally more a think tank for the really smart economic guys within our group.
If it's all the same to everyone else, I'd rather avoid the Semitic references. Thank you.
Yeah, well, it's being explained because it's part of the culture, and it's been a cringe part of the culture for me because I also object to it. But the crabbing seems like it came from Russian quarters too, by the way. Like they're the ones that called. I don't know where crabbing came from, but I always thought
it was wormholers.
Yeah, wormholers. You're right. But Russian wormholers specifically. Yeah,
the only distinction is that refers to a much more specific set of ISK generation.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting because there's a whole tradition of name calling in Eve, right? And it's really interesting because it comes from different countries. So the contexts, the stuff that Brits say, are different than the stuff Australians say is different from the stuff that US people say in the game. Maybe we'll do a show on like all the bad words.
First time I heard on Mumble, because I'm an American, so I don't know a lot of the British terms. Some guy said, like, I'm going to go smoke a fag. And I'm like, what the hell did he just say? Like, and then I realized, like, someone explained, oh, that's what they call cigarettes. I'm like, oh.
Yeah. Yeah, there's some, it's all kinds of interesting stuff. Probably not a topic that I could take on very well, but I do. It's one of the things about Eve that exists, whether you like it or not. It's out there. All right. I think we're pretty much done for the show. I want to say thanks very much to Seamus and Noisy and Carneros and, of course, Aerith for showing up and giving us a bunch of information on what could have been uninformative talk, right? Because a lot of people are very emotional about this stuff, but I think we got a lot of good information out there, which is pretty cool. I also want to thank the audience for so many people showing up. Again, I attribute it to the guests. Not necessarily the show, because we're in competition with so many things. I'm really stunned at how many people showed up. This is great. And I want to thank the people who became followers, which would be actually Seamus, do you mind reading that list?
Hold on. Here we go. So High Tax, Smoky Haze 78, Cryptic 01, Disaster 12, Tyke Morbolt, Trigger Mechanism, Bryce Darkstar, Wolf Glenn, Catherine Fuller, Dark Jedi 23, and Mr. Tarrington. That's the list of followers and list of subscribers. Wolf Glenn, Sandwich, Rum Waffle has subscribed for 31 months in a row, and Sea Shuffle for 20 months in a row.
That's awesome. And thank you for reading that. And thanks for everybody that was in the audience and listening to this in podcast form. The last thing is that it looks like there, again, is a lot of hostilities in VTAC I UEL. That system, it looks like there's a huge fight that's about to happen. So with that, we drop you off with at your weekend and also the beginning of summer.
Well, if we want to fight, NC's balls need to drop. Go ahead and jump, bitches.
All right, I gotta log in to do that, but I'm due with in real life. Thanks, guys. Thanks, everyone. That's it for Talking in Stations this week. We'll see you next week.
Thank you.
Semnol ka ke mo fa seda.